Subscribe to Bloody Monday and watch chilling horror stories almost every week. Don't forget to press the bell icon.
The True Story of Conjuring. What Really Happened, Part 1. This happened in 1971. It was very cold that year, so Roger and Carolyn Perrin moved to their farmhouse in Rhode Island in America along with their 5 daughters. But they didn't know that this was going to be the biggest mistake of their lives. That farmhouse was built in 1736, and it stretched over 200 acres of land. Roger had acquired that place on a lease for 10 years, but the moment they moved in, they got a strange feeling about the place. Their daughters' toys moved from one place to another on their own. Many times, the photos hanging on the wall would fall off. Sometimes late at night, Carolyn would hear someone scream in pain. One day, when their youngest daughter was playing on her own, Carolyn saw a dark shadow smiling at her from behind the staircase. Her neck was tilted as if someone had twisted it. That shadow kept staring at her and had a big smirk on her face. But the shadow didn't do any harm, as all it did was look quietly at her daughter. She had now become a frequent occurrence in the house. One night, Carolyn told Roger everything she was witnessing in the house. Even Roger agreed that he had noticed weird things happen in the house, too. Carolyn was very worried about the kids. They decided to send the kids away for a while, but just then the bed started shaking vigorously. The bed then floated up in the air and slammed on the ground with a huge thud. They were very frightened. They had never witnessed such a negative energy in the house. Out of fear, neither of them could sleep that night. After that night, it seemed as if something got into Carolyn. Her condition deteriorated, and it kept getting worse. She felt as if someone was piercing her body with needles all the time. Every night, the voice of the spirit echoed in her ears that woke her from her sleep. She demanded her children and asked her to leave the house. Sometimes the spirit would drag her out of bed and take her to the basement and hurt her. One night, Carolyn felt someone had grabbed her by the throat. When she opened her eyes, she saw a horrendous woman sitting on top of her who was trying to choke her to death. Carolyn tried very hard to get rid of her, but the spirit had possessed her body. The Perrin family's problems increased with each passing day. Since the night Carolyn had witnessed the evil spirit, she had been behaving strangely with her own kids. Whenever Roger stepped out for work, she used to lock the kids in a room and just stared at them for hours. If they didn't listen to her, she shouted at them. If they tried going to Roger, she would beat them up. The Perrin family was now sure that the house was haunted. All 5 girls were very worried with their mother's deteriorating condition. One day, Roger found his youngest daughter sitting by the door crying heavily. When he went close to her, he saw Carolyn was pulling her hair and was trying to chew it. Roger was stunned at the sight. He quickly pulled Carolyn away from their daughter and tied her to a chair She shouted and screamed, but Roger didn't budge. Moments later, Carolyn passed out. When she regained consciousness, she was a bit stable. She told Roger that a spirit was trying to take over her body. The spirit wanted their daughters, and if they didn't allow the spirit to do so, the spirit would kill both Roger and her. She also said the spirit looked hideous. And while she was speaking, she passed out once again. Roger was in a state of shock. He thought hard for a while and then laid Carolyn on the bed and headed out of the house. He went out to find more about the house and the spirit that haunted it. When he spoke to the neighbors, he found out that a woman named Bathsheba lived there along with her son and 3 daughters. And all 3 daughters had died, and no one knew their cause of death. When the police investigated, they found the girls were actually murdered. In fact, one of the girls had died because she was being nailed. The entire neighborhood believed that Bathsheba was a witch who sacrificed her kids to the devil god. But since police didn't find any evidence against her, they couldn't do anything about her. In a few years, Bathsheba hanged herself from a tree. Nobody knew why she did that. Since that day, whoever came to the house witnessed paranormal activities, and a few of them also spotted Bathsheba's spirit. All this information was too much for Roger to process. When he returned home, he saw something that shook him completely. He saw that Carolyn was missing from the bedroom, and there was a trail of black marks on the floor. It seemed as if Carolyn was dragged on the floor, leaving that trail. Suddenly, he heard loud banging coming from the basement. The black marks originated from the bedroom and went toward the basement. Roger gathered his courage and went downstairs. It was pitch dark in the basement, so he took out a matchstick from his pocket and lit it. But the matchstick immediately went out. He tried again, and this time, when he lit the matchstick, he saw Bathsheba's ghost was standing right in front of him. Roger was frightened, and the matchstick fell from his hand. That's when he saw Carolyn was lying unconscious in one corner. Roger lifted her and took her upstairs. However, he could still feel that Bathsheba was staring at him. Eventually, Roger decided to call the famous paranormal experts, Ed and Lorraine Warren. Carolyn's condition had gone from bad to worse. Her mouth was cut, and she would sit in a corner and eat spiders. The Warrens could feel something was terribly wrong with the house the moment they entered. They started their investigation and decided that performing an exorcism was the only way out. However, due to that, conditions worsened further. The spirit of Bathsheba was enraged. Apart from Carolyn, she had now started inflicting harm to their daughters as well. One night, the Warrens tied Carolyn to the bed and started performing an exorcism of the house. When they came to the bedroom, Carolyn had disappeared from the bed. In fact, she was right behind them. She was floating in the air, and her hair was open and messy. Her eyeballs were missing, and her eyes had turned completely red. Her jaw was stretched and pulled from both sides. Bathsheba had taken complete control over her. The entire house was shaking. The Warrens tried a lot, but seeing Carolyn's condition, Roger stopped them. Carolyn passed out and fell on the floor. With time, all of Roger's money went to taking care of Carolyn. When the condition didn't look like it was getting any better, Roger kicked the Warrens out of his home. Without enough money, the Perron family had to somehow manage and live there for 7 years. But after 7 years, when they finally changed houses, Bathsheba followed them. And for a whole lot of years, the strange incidents kept occurring with them. How did you like our series on the true story of Conjuring? If you liked it, then do subscribe to our channel, Bloody Monday, as we are working really hard to keep you entertained and scared. Spread the word among your friends and family.